So it's a pleasure for me to be here today, and I want to thank SANS, first of all, for giving me this opportunity. I want to thank all instructors for giving me this knowledge and supporting my passion that eventually led me to speaking here today. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. I hope you grabbed some snacks that will help make my talk more tolerable. And so yeah, my name is Sasha. I'm 19 years old. I'm a first-year student at University of Maryland. 1.5 years ago, I first took my SANS course when I was 17, and I eventually got my advisory board member status. It supported my passion, and today I'm speaking here. So yeah, what do you expect to learn from today's session? I want you to find out that it's possible to track a person down by just using an advertisement service. I will show you an example, 2 examples actually. And the key takeaway from here is that you know that it is possible and how to do it. Let's start with a brief intro. We currently live in a world where every single company gathers data about us. And it's even harder to find a company which doesn't gather data about you, right? So we're all kind of used to that, and we all think, well, our data is 5 times encrypted on secure servers. Advertisement data is very sensitive, and no one will know what I buy on Amazon or who I call, who messages me, etc. Well, that is actually not true, and that is something I'm going to talk about today. So here is the brief plan for a presentation. I'll start with the history. I'll explain how ADINT term arose, and ADINT, as you probably understand, is a part of OSINT such as MASINT, SIGINT, etc. It's not a very well known, but I'll explain how it was developed, what were the public consequences, how did the public perceive it, how is it used nowadays, what are the practical applications of it. Then we'll dive deep into methodology. It will be a small example. It will not be so much related to ADINT, but it will help you understand how to use ADINT, because then we'll dive deep into some harder examples. Then third part is my favorite part, because you'll see what you can get with using this technology, and the results would be absolutely insane. We'll also discuss automation for a little, just in case you're interested in scaling this. And we'll finish up with the boring stuff like costs, limitations, and we'll finish with the potential. So you have something to tell. What did you learn for a presentation? Okay, let's start with the history. It all started in 2017 when Paul Vines from University of Washington published his very well-known, currently well-known paper, How Alice Can Track Bob, using very small budget. It was $1,000 back then. And the paper shows that the results are really, really unexpected. You can find out such sensitive information as dating apps installed on the person's device. You can find out religious apps. You can track down the location up to 8-meter precision and do it with intervals of 5 minutes. So this was absolutely an insane result, and the Wired journal was surprised no less than I am, and they published a huge article on practical applications of this methodology. Then in 2022, Wired published another article on the same topic again. I certainly hope they'll publish another one for me. And then currently, if you research the term ADINT or try to make a practical investigation, how is it used now, you will, of course, see those articles, but mainly you'll see that some Israeli companies develop high-level intelligence products in order to use them in military or for other purposes of really strong intelligence. Now, I will think of it as a math task. What do we have? What do we want to achieve? And what is the practical result? What do we achieving? It's a small example, as I said before. We start with some information about the target, right? We have an email or a phone number or a mobile advertisement ID. For simplicity, let's say we have an email. It's a very popular identifier. What do we want to get? We want to get basic information, such as gender, such as age, such as possible interests. And we'll do this through auditory analysis services. What are those? Well, small businesses, middle businesses, they need to enhance their advertisement campaigns somehow. And so what they do, they gather a list of email addresses, first names, second names, and they put it into a platform which says, your clients are mainly this gender, this age, so they can enhance the ad performance. We will use this to find out information about the target. First thing we'll do is to gather 100 literally random emails from the internet. I know it might seem confusing, so I'll convey it with a better analogy. Suppose you're a bar owner and you get an order for Long Island cocktail. You take a 5-liter bucket, you take 100 different shots and start pouring those shots into the bucket. What you eventually get is a list of 100 emails gathered from anywhere on the internet. They just, the advertisement service just needs to work with them. And we ask the service to analyze those emails. So basically, we give it a sample and we say, well, now, tell me about average gender, about common interest. And we get those results. I don't expect you to read through this, but we'll come back to that later. Next thing we'll do is that we'll take the target email, a person we're searching for, and add their email to the pool which we analyzed before. It's exactly the same emails. You don't need to find 100 more random emails. And you launch the analysis again. This is a fairly straightforward step. And so I think it's obvious at this point that the results will differ just by some percent, which represents the target. Because target is present in sample number 1, sorry, in sample number 2, but it's not present in sample number 1. That's, of course, an overwhelmed slide, but even now you see that it was 68.4% men, it became 68.7%. Average age is between 18 and 25, it also increased. And so we just used some auditory analysis services, which is a simple business tool to understand quite a few information about our target. And it could really push the investigation forward. What are the examples of stuff we see? First of all, targets follows fashion. They don't have a car. They are a man. They mainly use smartphone or something else to access the internet. They live in Moscow. Their age is somewhere in between 18 and 25. All analysis was conducted on my friend, so this is not unethical, but we'll come back to that later. Now, let's consider actual ADINT. That's what we're here for. And this example is slightly more complex. This time, we're not going to use 2 samples. We're going to just use 1. And we are also going to launch ads this time. We're not actually analyzing something. We ask a service to show the ads we want to a person. Now, for the following example, I'm going to work with a situation when our target lives in Washington, D.C., because we're in Washington, D.C. What are we going to do? We need to launch an advertisement campaign for, of course, Washington, D.C. How do we do that? Some advertisement platforms do not work because of the security measures with the list of emails which are fewer than 100, at least 100. Some require 1,000, some require 100,000, but for now, let's stick to 100 because it's a common average. We will take 100 emails from middle of nowhere, from a place where people don't travel to Washington, D.C., for example, Siberia. Let's take 100 emails from Siberia and 1 target email. And then we will ask the advertisement platform to show advertisements in Washington, D.C. for people that we've specified. And guess what's going to happen? Well, advertisement platform sees we have 101 person, 100 of those are not in D.C., so I'm showing as just 1 person. And that's the flag. Because if the advertisement campaign worked, we're going to know that our target is in Washington, D.C. If we manage to show ads to at least 1 person, we know that the person is in Washington. So yeah, this slide again describes what are we doing and how are we doing. We take 100 emails from middle of nowhere. It's easy to gather those. Don't worry, there are social media groups which support that. You just need to go through the profiles, extract emails, and we're not even working with the data of these people. So what are we doing next? Because our goal for now is to track the location. We selected the area. We launched an advertisement campaign there. It was a fairly straightforward step, but I feel like I'm making this too easy, so let's add some geometry here. We are making a circle, splitting it into 4 parts, and we're working with each part separately. Straightforward again. We launched a big ads campaign. We know it worked. The target is in this area, so we shrink the area down to 1/4 of a circle. We do the exact thing again. We launched the advertisement campaign on a smaller area. We see if it worked. If it did, continue. If it didn't, select the other area. Let's suppose it did. We do this again and again and again. I don't want my presentation to be 120 slides long. So for now, let's suppose we tracked the person down. We know the exact location, probably 1/8 of a mile by 1/8 of a mile circle. That's again the default range. And so what do we do next? As soon as we have a location of the person, which we tracked with ads. First thing I'm going to say, open cameras. Those are really underestimated. If you Google open cameras Washington, D.C., there are going to be like hundreds different sites on which there are going to be 5 or 4 different cameras for Washington, D.C. And you, of course, can utilize this because if you know how target looks like, you can track them down on the streets by using open cameras. If you don't know how they look like, but in case advertisement platform showed you their path of movements, you can understand who the target is by looking at the flow of people on the street. Use trackers. Oh, that's a very broad topic, and I'm going to just briefly talk about it, but it's still really interesting. Of course, we all know about loggers, and we all know about pixels. They're most commonly used when we say tracker. Pixel can extract IP information, maybe basic client information. It's not that interesting. It's still useful. IP is a good pivot point in these investigations. But what happens if the user clicks on our ad? And this is a whole new story, of course, because then it's just endless opportunities to track them down. We can get browser fingerprint. We can get mouse movements, which is a very, very interesting topic. You can psychologically profile a person by their mouse movements. You can use metrics, like Google metrics. And those are also really powerful tool because it shows all possible information that can possibly be extracted by a person. And the last thing I want to say, what to do next, is not exactly related on what to do when you track down a person, but rather when you're working with an advertisement platform, it's a piece of good advice. Try to stay creative. The approach I'm giving to you, when 100 emails are getting uploaded, then you add 1 target email, or you just upload the sample right away, is not always going to work. It depends on how precise the information is shown in the advertisement system. It depends on many factors. So if you think or if you see the approach that would work better, and it's quite intuitive because advertisement platforms are made for HR and for people who are not working in tech, try it. It might work much better than expected. Now, my favorite part. Let's discuss the capabilities. First off, when I'm seeing the word capabilities in relation to ADINT, the first word that comes into my mind is depends. Right, it depends. And I want to explain why. So I'll start my slide with the word depend, and I'll try to explain what type of data we can get, how we can get it. This is quite a long list, and I'm showing it to you for a reason. There is some sensitive information like income, history of sites visits, recent searches, categories of incoming calls, which is really hard to get if you're not using ADINT. But how do we get this? When we're ordering ads, don't right away think Google. Google is not the best ad provider in this case. Google doesn't even work with personally identifiable information. So are many other giant services. You can always go to third-party ad providers, which buy ads from smaller companies and sell it to bigger ones, or work with them themselves. You can always go to mobile operators because those store really sensitive data which is impossible to acquire otherwise. And for every investigation where you think, I need certain piece of data, you need to develop kind of an ADINT mindset. Who usually stores this data? There are banks that gather information about people. There are mobile ads, game ads, anything. So those really depend on the source. Now, I'll allow myself to speak about automation for a little. Imagine if you automate it. And here I will describe a case which I faced during my research. It was a mobile operator, a common advertisement profile, nothing special. And I started clicking and looking if it's possible to maybe add a sprinkle of automation. So what did I find out? It was actually possible to extract a live map of movements, live list of incoming and outgoing calls, along with live list of all identifiers from the previous slide. So if something changed in a person's life, you will immediately know it. Of course, it might be considered unethical in some jurisdictions, but I think that we as OSINT practitioners should know that this exists. Because how can we defend from stuff if we don't know how it works, right? And it's also how many ADINT products, commercial products now work. Most of them are scaled on a bigger level. So companies just buy a ton of data from Meta, Facebook, etc., and they work with it. I'm showing the approach that works on some target individuals specifically. Now, let's discuss cost and limitations. Those are nonetheless really interesting. First off, costs. After you heard what kind of sensitive information is it possible to acquire, you probably think, well, it costs like maybe $10,000 to do it. Well, it's not exactly the true, or it's not always $10,000. I spent personally on my tests just $5, and I've tested quite a few services. So here's the guideline how I did it. Many advertisement services, mainly media giants, they require an entry fee to use their service. Like, pay us $1,000, they will stay on your balance, and those can be used for a number of ADINT campaigns. And, well, of course, I avoided those. It's really hard to acquire access to them. You need to be a company, and a big company, and I'm a private individual, so I can't. Prices really depend on the region. That's the main thing you should keep in mind. Because things, for example, mainly in Eastern Europe or maybe in Middle East, they cost less than in the US. And it's not only in relation to ads, it's in relation to everything. So it's reasonable to expect that prices somewhere in Europe will be much lower than the prices in the US. Ad provider type and size also matters, but it's such a hard topic to analyze that I'm not going to stop on it for too long. Just don't try to select too big or too small providers. I think that's the best I can say. It depends on the type of data you're looking for. And this is me trying to reference the fact that you should really choose the source. Where do you get the advertisement information from? If you want to get something about calls, it's reasonable not to show information on the website. It's reasonable to go to a mobile operator. And this is, again, the part of the ADINT mindset. And the fourth one is my favorite, your communication skills. I paid $5 just because I texted companies, I'm being polite and asking for a test period. So it's something you can do as well. Why would you buy something if you can ask it for free, especially if it's a testing period for a week, which is, by the way, enough to track approximately one person. And yes, the hardest part is, of course, getting access to the advertisement system, because many will just refuse right away to work with private individuals. Not all, some part. Some will work only with media giants, and some will require you to take like $1,000 for an entry fee. So skip on those. I'm not a lawyer. I'll start the slide with these words. But it's still important to know What impacts ADINT? Because we should keep this in mind. GDPR, we all know it. It limits data gathering in many jurisdictions, so it's much harder to find working service for ADINT in Europe. It is still possible. You will just spend more time on doing so. There's also CCPA in California, so if you are tracking somebody in California, that will definitely take longer time rather than if you would track somebody in Washington, DC. There's also people in China. I'm not going to stop this for too long. If you are interested in whether it works in some specific region, best thing I can advise, consult local cybersecurity experts and lawyers, but describe them what you're doing first. And I feel the need to slowly start wrapping up with the potential. So this is a really conclusive part. Why do we use it? Why do we possibly not want to use it? And I'll start with cons. The very important part here is that it's time consuming. Every time you think about ADINT, it is really requiring your research. You need to research advertisement platforms. You need to research the ways to interact with them, and most have really scary interfaces. So it will take a lot of time. You need to test your assumptions by uploading different auditories, by seeing if the results change over time or anything like that. So yeah, it's very time consuming. It is also vulnerable to security patches. What I mean by that, in case you automated it, it works a week, it works 2 weeks, it works 3 weeks, and on a 4th week, advertisement platform decides, well, now we need to adjust our security practices. It is painful, and in case they will limit it to maybe 1,000 emails per upload, it's probably a guarantee that the approach will stop working. It also requires a deep understanding of methodologies used. So you need to understand how to work with advertisement platforms, preferably have some experience working with those. It is not technical at all. It's just a basic UI interface, but it can get complicated. Might require math expertise. That is more of a joke, of course. When we talk about selecting circles on a screen, it is, of course, not hard, but many advertisement platforms actually allow you to select more complex shapes. You can bound the search area by streets, and that requires working with maps, with graphs, in some more complex ways. When you need to maybe make something really efficient, it might require set theory knowledge, and of course, basic geometry and coding. Fifth con, which is not actually on the slide, but still I'm going to reference it, it is hardly repeatable. It is important to always look how the algorithms inside of advertisement systems work, because they always work differently. There is an auction part. There is a part when maybe person's interest changed over the time when you launched the ADINT analysis, but it's still repeatable. If you try to do the exact same steps, I highly doubt you'll get completely different results. Results would be the same, they will just differ by maybe 0.25%. It depends on the platform, of course. And now let's think about pros. Of course, the biggest pro here is when we think about dead-end investigations. When we have an email, but we don't know what to do with it. Nothing worked. We can't find social medias. We can't find any references in the internet. The nickname is not the same anywhere. Then we will try ADINT, because it's the only way we can extract some more data about complete dead-end situation. We will at least know if it's a male or female. We will at least know approximate age, so we can start working by shrinking the pool of potential targets. It can give access to sensitive data. I will under no circumstance say that ADINT is the only way of getting sensitive data for people. But it's certainly one of the most interesting ways of doing so, because there are some parts of this data which are almost impossible to acquire in any other way but ADINT. It is a powerful tool if it's scaled. That's what we see now. That's what we're going to see in the future. What I mean by that, companies which are currently working on ADINT practices did slightly different thing from what I'm showing to you. They bought a whole lot of data from Meta or Facebook or Google. They extracted location from it, did the same statistical analysis, and attached data to people. That's a very costly approach. If you automate this to help you in regular daily investigations, it can be really helpful, and it's also much easier and costs less. Not many people and products use it. It means that most advertisement platforms are not really aware or do not care that much that this is present. So it's also a pro for us as for Austin practitioners. And the fifth one is, of course, advertisement industry continuously grows because companies need to invent new tracks and new ways of tracking us. So ADINT, of course, will also grow. We will, over the time, we'll be able to acquire more sensitive data. We'll be able to acquire it faster. And so ADINT will grow over time, of course. That is pretty much it I have for now. Those are my selected sources which I used for a presentation. If you want to read about ADINT, you can definitely look at those. I want to thank everybody who was helping me with the presentation. My friend Nikolai, who was a target of the test, of course. And if you have any questions, and I hope you have them, feel free to ask them on Slack, in person, or I'll be just around after the talk. Thank you.